Well, welcome to the show, guys. So good to have you both. Before we get into rums, I would like to know a little bit about your journeys leading up to here. So, either one of you can start.
I'll let Demi start. Age before beauty.
I was gonna say, you got this line. Okay, so thanks for having me, Anish. It's really nice to be here. So my name is Dimi. I'm from the French Caribbean. Been was in Paris. I've been in the spirits industry, for a few moons. Let's just not be specific about how many moons it's been. I started, back in the days, washing glasses, mopping floors, and then eventually, the career kind of took me to many wonderful things. Working some of the great bars, that London was able to kind of create. Working with the large number of brands, from consulting to advocacy, ambassadorship, which eventually kind of led me here to India. So well seasoned, I would say, in the industry, and been fortunate enough to train thousands of bartenders around the world, and see lots of different cultures.
Yeah, I think that's one common thread between both of you, traveling around the world,
Yeah, it's been.
interacting with bartenders, customers.
It's a fun line to be in. Yeah. Good. I mean, he's far too humble. I thought the introduction would be a little bit longer.
Yeah, like he's
But I think I've been in the industry. I did college in like 2003, studied in Dada Catering, IHM Bombay. I mean, depending on where you come from, people get irritated by which name that you use, but it's Dada Catering, always will be. I've been in the industry since about 2003, bartending at nightclubs, like most of us do. Mopped floors, did all of that shit. But going back to him, number of things that he just completely missed out,
Yeah.
and he has no clue that he was far away, but he was motivating people like us back home when there was no industry, there was nothing that was really going on, and you just made like 4 drinks, and suddenly this show pops up on TV called Cocktail Kings, where
Yeah.
he and Colin was traveling. So it was that, and there was Kevin Bosch, who used to do
Thirsty Traveler.
the Thirsty Traveler, and that was the only alcohol shows which are allowed, and I used to watch that. I was like, dude, that is the line I want to be in someday.
Yeah.
So did not know at some point that he'll become my mentor. And very few people know that the whole brand ambassador job that we just spoke about, which I took on a brand ambassador role in 2005, 2006, but really understood it with the Bacardi guys when he was in Grey Goose.
Yeah.
So they were the guys who actually developed the brand ambassador role back in the day. But at a level, they used to compare who gets a better massage in the Virgin Atlantic first class, right? And I would not even get money for a 10,000 rupee suit
Yeah.
in back home in India. But like dressing properly, living the brand, waistcoats came into play. Till then, it was very much like hard rock.
Yeah.
When I was starting off, and that was what was considered cool. And we met all of these guys, him, David, and a host of other people who cared about how they dressed, how they put themselves forward. Completely changed our lives, right?
Yeah. I think Demi was one of the first brand ambassadors that I ever met. I think Demi and Tim that time,
Yeah.
back in India.
Mhm.
Yeah, but there's becoming a
Tim
Demi
Judge.
fan club.
Tim Judge,
episode.
yeah, always,
Tim
always.
Judge,
And then he married a model,
yeah.
right? I was like, dude. I did not understand that the whole bartending industry could kind of make that happen. But anyways, that aside, he did inspire and motivate us.
Yeah.
I was in and out of the industry. I worked in a call center as well for a bit, struggled in Bombay as you do, helped open a few bars, then joined a company called Talio. Then I got into Bacardi sales. So very few people know I did pure sales for a bit, which was going around Delhi trying to sell myself in a bottle of Bacardi. Which was a lot of fun, but then they got me back into the whole brand ambassador gig, and I ended up in Mexico, and I met this guy called David and got in touch with him more, and the way they looked at drinks was completely different, and my understanding of rum started getting better. And this is like 15 years back. That time we went from just white rum, which was made famous in the 70s, to maybe a Bacardi Ocho and dark rums and aged rums. I was like, this is cool shit. And then there's Cuban drinks, and so that kind of completely changed my perspective, and I made sure I traveled 5 times a year to go to as many countries and meet as many bartenders
Yeah.
and learn that life was good. Bacardi had been amazing to me. Opened a bar called PCO, which is like a speakeasy. Ended up in Singapore doing 28 Hong Kong Street.
Yeah.
Then did Philippines and Thailand, which was amazing to be a brand ambassador in. I'll tell you those stories later. But yeah, all of that kind of conspired, and Countertop happened. We opened Tesouro in Goa, and yeah, a lot of cool stuff's happening, and now we're sitting here talking rum.
And Bar Tesouro was Asia number 4.
Number 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened at the butthole of nowhere. Sorry, can I say butthole? I've said buttholes 3 times. Shit, I only have 2 more left. It has been super well received. We have had a lot of support from people. We have a nice rum collection, a good agave collection, and people do come and consume all of that. So being where we are has been awesome. And the crew's good. Shout out to them.
Amazing.
But you've been a great flag bearer for India because, you know, I mean, back in the days, you didn't have a lot of Indian bartenders, you know,
Yeah.
flying around and getting people from here starting to get some kind of recognition, you know, and I think that Arijit was definitely the pioneer.
The Prince of India.
The Prince of India,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, is definitely the pioneer in that front.
Yeah.
You know, because you could see that, you know, in India you have the potential of having, you know, some really good, talented people. You know, and
Yeah.
and he was the first in line. So yeah,
Super. Well, cheers to that.
cheers for
Salute.
that. That's the number 5, is it?
Number-
Okay, let's get into rums. Let's go to the absolute basics. What is rum and where does rum come from?
Okay. Well, what is rum? Rum is a spirit which is distilled and made from sugarcane. It can be sugarcane molasses, or it can be sugarcane juice. It can be sugarcane honey. You know, any kind of syrup, you know, which is made from sugarcane. You know, this is what basically rum is. You know, in a very basic definition,
Yeah.
if I may say. Where it started once upon a time. Well, it started, of course, because sugarcane itself is not native, you know, to the Caribbeans. You know, when you look at records, you know, it comes out from Papua New Guinea. That's kind of where it came from, and eventually through hundreds of years, centuries, and millennia, you know, it made its way, you know, west. You know, there's, you know, if you look in India, there's a lot of history that says that in India there were spirits, you know, which were made, you know, from sugarcane base. Do you call them rum? What do you call them? You know, that's a different question. But here there were spirits being made. You know, what quality was it at that time? You know, it's again, you know, something different to explore. Okay, but they were, you know, because distilling was here, sugarcane were here, so people kind of tried it. And then eventually, when sugarcane made its way towards Europe, you know, when Christopher Columbus eventually made its way towards the Caribbean on his second voyage, you know, he had sugarcane. So it's not from there directly that rum kind of started, because from then eventually they went over to Brazil, and in Brazil around the 1500s, 1600s, you know, they already had an aguardiente, you know, which is kind of a type of rum because it's made, you know, from sugarcane. And of course, all these European nations, you know, they had distilling expertise, you know, which they took with them abroad when they got, you know, into those areas. So today, it is widely seen that rum is made, was created, you know, in Barbados. That's kind of what you see. But however, you know, there's also strong arguments that say that in the island, in the island of St. Kitts, you know, in some of these areas, the French and the English were already making rum, you know, in that area. So what really kind of pushed rum, and why Barbados is seen as the nation that created rum, is more they commercialized rum, because Barbados, they were one of the first producer of sugar, of exporting sugar, and the more sugar you have, you know, the more molasses extract you have, you know, and this is that eventually, you know, was distilled to make rum, and that the people in Barbados, the English in Barbados, but then, you know, they really kind of pushed. Okay, between the 1640s in St. Kitts, you already have records of spirit being made from molasses. You have that. Okay, so I think it's probably just more accurate to say that the Barbados really kind of exported, you know, and really kind of pushed rum, because of course how big the British Empire was. Okay, so this is pretty much kind of where it started.
Super interesting though. When you were talking about rum and connection with India, every presentation that we did ever about rum, whichever brand it was, right? You talk about Amatusalam, you talk about us, you talk about Havana. There was one slide which was always there, how Alexander's, one of his general called Naracus, had this thing that he had written down, right? He had come to scope out the countries, and he had written about how Indians were extracting juice from tall reeds, which was then being converted into alcohol, which is called Soma, Sura, and Indian had formats of making it, which I felt was which is super amazing. And in my journey of making rums and having a brand, I always felt, why does India not have a real rum?
Yeah.
So that story has always been there, and how sugarcane found its way across the world. It is an oversimplification on saying that it's just a spirit that does come from molasses or a byproduct. If you look at the whole world, it's one of the highest produced spirit across, right?
Yeah.
If you have sugarcane, you can make rum out of it, and different people have different styles. So it's always been difficult to kind of pinpoint who started it, who did it. These are like all famous things, they kind of develop parallelly, right? Till somebody figures out how to make it super commercial and say, I was first. Barbados, I think, did a brilliant job. And even now, it's one of the best rum producing countries, and the kind of stuff that they're doing is incredible.
No, it's not.
I mean, I have a hero sitting there, but I have a hero sitting there as well. So.
A lot of people might think Old Monk started rums, but please do not be in that misconception.
It's amazing.
Are we talking about where the bottle came from and that it was a whiskey before, or are we not getting into it?
We'll perhaps get into it later. Let's also talk about the broad types of rum. Again, in the Indian context, we've always seen white rum, dark rum, and that's where it ends, right? But of course, there's so much more to it. So, how do you broadly categorize rums?
See, I mean, because personally, I don't look rum at dark and stuff like that. I personally, and this is where I think that the rum category will eventually go to, because it's just very confusing. For a lot of people, they see white, gold, and dark, but then because you have all these nations who do rums in different styles, okay? Because you can have a white rum that comes from Barbados. You can have a white rum that comes from the French Indies. You can have a white rum that comes from Jamaica. And all these three rums are different, even though they're the same color. But you put them here on your table, whatever, and you taste them, and you will see some very clear differences in palate. So I don't think it's accurate, and this is one, unfortunately. It's been, and that's I wouldn't call it an issue, but it's not very reflective of what the rum category is, and it doesn't give the right pointers to people to be informed and making the better choices with a rum that fits what they're looking for. Okay, so for me, when I look at rums, I look more where they come from, okay, because that gives me an indication of the style and the profile. Okay. French style is Agricole, so it's made out of sugarcane juice, and when and it's made in column stills, right? So when you taste it, it's very herbaceous, it's green, and it really is a representation of sugarcane juice.
And
right?
the appreciation of the raw ingredient, right?
Exactly.
Terroir, like all things French.
Yeah.
They have a lot of appreciation from where things come from, what the terroir is, what the season was like, and what they get, and how to best extract that flavor.
Exactly. Molasses is different, and a lot of the styles are pretty much made because the English, when they really kind of traveled, at the beginning, they really had pot stills. I mean, everyone had kind of pot stills, and over the course of time, this is when these different styles eventually became the identity. Bacardi, he did a really soft, sweet, light rum, and that became a Spanish style. So when you look at all these Spanish colonies, their rums tend to fall into that category. When you look at British styles, they've kept the identity of the pot stills. Of course, for commercial reasons, eventually, they added kind of column stills. But you do tend to have a little bit more spice, and those kind of heavy flavors, that you actually get, from a pot still.
Which eventually became dark rums, right? So dark rums was not really a category. It was the English rums which started getting categorized as dark rums because of the way they were making and the source that they had. I think a bit of it was Demerara style rums as well. So even like when we're talking about Old Monk, that was India's version of creating English style dark rum.
Yeah. I also want to very quickly touch upon when we are talking about pot stills and column stills. Those are two types of different stills you use for distilling alcohol. So just to give context to people for that, column stills today are used for more, I would say, commercial
Mostly
purpose.
commercial rums,
Yeah.
And it was improvement in technology that came in through the 1800s and kind of stuck through. Does not mean they are bad,
Correct.
but the style is very different.
Yeah.
But there is a conversation to be had. There is a conversation going on outside India about real rums, right? Because what happened with rum is it expanded so much that not only did you have the basic understanding of white, dark, and gold, but then you had fruit flavored rums and spicy rums, which are basically with additives, and people started adding more stuff. So there are traditionalists who say that you should not be able to do that. So there is a whole movement that's talking about a good true rum has to come from pot stills, because there has to be copper contact, which builds in a lot more character, right? So they have their place in a bar, but then the column stills also have a very interesting flavor profile that's being developed, and they of course focus a lot more on the aging process, and that's a whole set of rum that does exist. More and more rums, the new rums or craft rums, they are going back to using pot stills, or at least combining both styles to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and then on top of that, you have the age statements, which are just a little bit kind of complicated, because for a lot of people, if you see a 16-year-old number on the bottle, you anticipate and you think that the rum is 16 years old, but it's not. It's a whole blend of rums, and the oldest, is that. So it's a little bit misleading.
So is that the opposite of how whiskey works for age statements?
Yeah, it's not the same, because in rum, in whiskey it has to be the youngest, but in rum is not, so I won't say which brand, but
Come on, say it.
Say it.
no,
Say it.
no, I don't want to do that. But the age statement, which is a big statement there, it says, and you would think that, oh, this is the oldest one, but it's not, so I think there's a lot of discussions, because every rum producing nation will want to promote and safeguard, the way that they do it. The French, we've been doing this, for forever, pretty much. That's why Rum Agricole, you can only kind of technically make it, in the French unit with specific regulations. Even now, Zacapa in Guatemala, they've themselves, got their own
Style of
regulations that protect Guatemalan rums, and everyone eventually is going to go that, and that doesn't mean that Guatemala and the French Indies, will have the same regulations, because they use different, they come from different places, they use different sugar canes, one is sugarcane juice, the other one is molasses, so there's a whole bunch of
and
things.
there's also sugarcane honey, right? They reduce the juice down to get a lot more of the character coming in, and so all of them, in some cases, I think making rum is a byproduct of the sugar industry. In other cases,
In our
they
cases,
specifically
that's so much, right? In India, that's so much.
we make our whiskey from rum as well. So.
Yeah.
we love
Just to
that.
confuse people even
we love
more.
that stuff.
Okay, can we quickly touch upon what molasses is, because we said molasses so many times?
I mean, the easiest way to explain it, if people are trying to imagine what it is, so imagine Fevicol, but just darker in color and with lots of spices and mineral. So once you get the juice down and you treat it, right, and you extract the sugar out, what's left is this thick liquid, right, which looks like gloop. At best, has mineral content, but still has sugar and is highly stable. Sugarcane juice in itself, if you leave it out, it ferments really fast, and then it'll start going bad. Molasses is a lot more stable, so that way you could in the industrial business, you could
Easier to use.
and you can make a lot more money at various stages of the same product. So molasses basically looks like Fevicol, but dark in color, still super tasty. So that is what is fermented, and then you go ahead with the distillation to make the rum.
Yeah.
Right.
So should we broadly look at Agricole versus, not versus, but Agricole?
I mean, if I'm allowed to go into a monologue and bring into context and perspective on how I learned and wrapped my head around what was happening with rum, because rum is a lot more complex than whiskey and vodka and agave and a lot of other stuff, right? So the first way that we started was, of course, I like my dark rum and my white rum. White rums became really famous in the 70s, like I mentioned. Coca-Cola did a whole tie-up, and Rum and Coke, which was the Cuba Libre, became Rum and Coke, which went back to becoming Cuba Libre, depending on where you're bartending, if it's a speakeasy or a nightclub. But then there were, of course, the dark rum as well, or the spice rum, which people like, became collector editions, and you go around trying to collect them. And then you had all of these fruit flavored rums which were there. There was a lemon, there was watermelon, and they were all flavored rums. That's what we knew, right? That's what we were learning in India. But then as you grow up, you figure out other countries have rum as well. But within those countries, you have rums which are marketing rums, and then you have real rums, which we did not know about, right? If you were lucky, you would get one in your hand and you'd be like, oh, this does not taste like rum. It tastes a little bit funky.
Yeah.
Then you keep it back and you don't use it forever. That happened with me with a bottle called Ray and Nephew. Like it's like rocket fuel. That is what it was 10 years back. But now I love that stuff. We will sit and have like Kingston Negronis or something with it. So anyways, we did not know that. But then we were able to, then we knew about Casachas, which is kind of rum, but not rum, and it's very specific to Brazilians. So we figured out you can categorize rums as agricole and industrial, right? So, kinda.
Yeah.
Then you take agricole is the way it is. Usually will always be like a white rum, but super rough. Think a tequila. So it'll be what the ingredient is. Super herbaceous, lots of minerals, lots of flavors coming through, and you feel the funk as well. Whereas industrial was, he mentioned a word called aguardiente. It was a mix of aguardiente, which in English means fire water. Literally translated into whenever you have that, it burns your throat, right? So it was aguardiente and registrado kind of mixed in, lots of column still. So within that, you had a lot of different styles of rums which were there. So you had dark rums, you could get white rum, but you also could age it and you would get a gold rum. But then you can age it and add additives to go or more English style and make a dark rum. So that is what kind of existed. Then it went to the different countries and what they are doing. So there are people in Thailand who are French distillers making agricole style rum there.
Oh, yeah, Chalongbe.
Shalongbe.
Yeah.
So that exists. Then you think about another rum. There's a guy called Nick Sanuman who's working on a Isan rum, which is a particular. Again, they are using the French style of giving respect to where that particular ingredient comes from and then making rum out of it.
Yeah.
So it's become a lot more interesting. And then you see what's happening in India.
Yeah.
Right. India is, and I'm going to kind of try and circle back to what's in front of us. Is we were very limited to us liking Old Monk, but then other people started producing, okay, how can we make rum better? Which kind of opened up the market to a lot more rums coming in. There's a lot more understanding, and there's a difference between spice rum, there's a difference between demerara rum, then there's a countries which are coming in. Now people know what a Venezuela rum is. They know what a Flor de Caña is, right? Which is a Nicaraguan, and
which I'm seeing a lot in Bombay.
Yeah.
At least,
So they have kind of spread it out. And if you like cigars, if you know Nicaraguan cigars, now people are not looking just for whiskey.
Yeah.
They will say, oh shit, there's a rum that I can pair with my cigar. So which is something that you like, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the whole rum industry is expanding, and it's no longer about just the color.
For me personally, I think a lot of this exploration purely happened because of duty free. You would just pick up brands that you'd never heard of.
Yeah.
And some of them were more commercial, but some of them were really good.
Yeah. And you have to get lucky with it, right? If somebody has to give you that information and you have to know what's...
Yeah, well, duty free, of course, is great, but when you're exposed, to some of the big boys brands, because of course when you get to duty free, you've reached a certain kind of level. But I will always kind of encourage people just to go into, when they travel, if they can, because of course not everyone is able to do that. But to go into specialist stores, and speak to people, because these people are very knowledgeable, and the quality of rums that you see there, are stunning, because the expression, the philosophies, from every maker, comes in bottle, and there's so many amazing stories as to the different types of rums, and they don't have to be expensive, it's not always a matter of price, it's a matter of style, where it comes from, and the more that people are able to build, and feed, their curiosity, they will grow their understanding of how complex, the world of rum is, because there are some absolutely jewels out there, there definitely are across different styles, even in Australia, everyone now who has sugarcane, is kind of making rum, and taste, of course, is very kind of subjective, but it's very attractive, to be able to be exposed to all these different rums so that you can build your own understanding and your own assessment of what's out there.
Yeah.
Because there's so many amazing rum made by so many people around the world.
I think for me, collecting rums is just so much more exciting than collecting whiskies.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there's
The
so
work
much
on the
more fun.
the work on the labels.
Yeah.
Like if you see the rum, it's more fun with rum, right? Any way you look at it, I think. And rum guys have never been serious. They are. It's about life, and mostly we keep on talking about going to the Caribbean and Jamaica and stuff, right? So rum is just fun. There is, and the kind of stuff that they're doing. If you have like 7, 8 rums, all of them look different. They have that character, and they build that into it. They build that life into it. It's just amazing.
Should we get tasting? Because we have 2 bottles in front of us. And speaking about bottles and labels, I think I want to read both these labels and try and decode some of that stuff, because there are certain terms on both. You want to take me through this?
Got- yeah. I mean, both of us will kind of do it. I don't want.
Yeah.
I don't want to give him all the
Yeah,
limelight.
go ahead.
You want to go ahead with that? He can do short
Yeah.
story.
I mean, so there's a lot of stuff going on the whole plantation term, but plantation basically is where the sugar cane is grown, right? And that's what the whole understanding of it is. It's a great brand. I do appreciate people who start off brands. So I always look for who the person behind that brand is. I had met Alexander Gabriel at BCB, which is the Bar Convent Berlin. Great guy. And when I was running a bar in Singapore, we were one of the distributors for it, right? So Proof & Co. and I used to run 28. So they were. So it's a great rum, and they had something called the Stiggins Pineapple, right? Which was my introduction into the whole range, and I was like, damn, this is really, really good. And they were talking about how the pineapple was cut and was soaked in, and then they made the rum. I was like, dude, this guy's awesome. And then we also knew about in rum there was something called bottlers, right? So they are guys who collect rum from different distilleries, bring it together, and then they bottle it. So companies like Samaroni, Caroni, a lot of the like Trinidadian rums, which all existed. And I was getting to learn about this. I was getting into that whole industry, but they were super expensive. Whereas these guys were making bartender-friendly products.
Yeah.
This is something that I could use at a bar. There was a story to communicate. He was getting rums from different countries that he really liked, and then doing a secondary aging, like resting it in France, right, to give his touch to it. Later found out that he was a cognac producer, and then he started traveling the world, started collecting spirits and rums, and that's how his whole kind of direction came in, and the company Plantation was formed. Eventually, I think down 14, 15 years, he ended up buying 2 distilleries as well, Long Pond and West Indies Rum Distillers, WIRD and Long Pond. Long Pond is in Jamaica. So again, 2 very different styles of making rum, which gave him ability to select a lot of different barrels and batches and then take it back and figure out what experimentation he would do. There was a point that I wanted to make my own rum, and eventually we made it.
Which you did, yeah.
So in the 20 rums that we had listed out, 5 rums came from these guys. So we pretty much learned this whole rum industry thing from these guys. And we figured, it's not that difficult. So can 2 bartenders figure out how to make this without putting too much money in?
Yeah.
Right?
And a lot of rums are blends, right?
Yeah. So, and they have a lot of, so in rums, you just don't have a master distiller, you have a master blender.
Yeah.
Who also has to know how to age, which is a science in its own, right? Aging, and rather it's magic. You do not know what is going to come out. So blending is what allows you to perfect the rum or get consistency going. This one's a beautiful dark rum. Like I said, it does have a little bit of the whole English style. So it's not dark because colors added or anything. It's because of the way the aging and the blending has gone in. It is Barbados and Jamaica.
There is definitely color in this, I'm sure.
I will get to that, but
Yeah.
it's accepted amount.
Okay.
It's there is they do follow all the rules that have been set down to make, because rum is also some amount of it is based on season and what is the product that you'll get. You still need to get consistency, right?
Right.
If you don't do consistency, there will always be market issues and it hits sales. So the local governments do allow you to adjust it to a certain point. Right, so this has I think 0.15 gram of 15 gram of dosage that kind of go in to get that consistency, right? But Jamaican rums are super. So both those rums have different styles
So sorry, this is Jamaican and
Barbados.
okay.
One is patent still, like the column stills, so which you will get lighter rums, and in those, the fermentation is a major part that adds flavor to the final product. Fermentation is short, usually 72 hours, maybe a little bit more, depending on what the conditions are and how hot or cold something the weather is. Whereas Jamaican rums, their fermentation process lasts up to 2 weeks, right? So
Even three.
even three.
Even three.
Which develops a lot of flavor and what we call it esters, more easily in a layman term defined as funky rums, right?
Yeah.
So those when you distill that, what ends up coming out has a lot of character and flavor that goes into it. So this is the combination of those two styles, right? And make some amazing drinks. We've done Negroni style drinks with it. Even like a dark daiquiri is pretty fantastic. We'll pour some.
Yeah.
You guys.
What I think is great, with the plantation range, for everyone out there, who's not particularly a rum connoisseur but who's a rum enthusiast, because they have so many. Excuse me, 1 second. Because there have so many rums, from lots of different islands that they have. It always gives you a very interesting perspective. Their range get you to travel, and it's a good intro into what type of rums that island does. They have Belize, they have Barbados, they have Guatemala, they have Guadeloupe, they have Jamaica, they have Fiji. So they do have all these islands, and if anyone out there has the ability to try them, they will see different styles, and those styles are a good expression of what that island does. Okay, which is very interesting, because since we talk about styles, that's one way to look at it. Eventually, it would be fantastic. Because in whiskey is this. You get Scotch whiskey, you know exactly what Scotch whiskey are. You talk about Japanese whiskey, you have an idea. You talk about American bourbon, American rye, you have an idea what they are. And it would be really amazing for consumers out there if eventually, when you talk about, let's just say, I don't know. Okay, we keep talking about Jamaica. You say Jamaica, you have an idea. You know that Jamaica, a lot of them are pot stills. There's probably a little bit of column stills in some of them, and that they use long fermentation. So because of that, you will have rums usually which are quite strong, robust. That's kind of a reference. If you go down to a Spanish island, you know that it's going to be light, sweet, and that's the style, So eventually, when someone says, oh, let's get a white rum, okay, white rum from where? Okay, and straight away, say, okay, let's get a bottle of gold rum, okay, from where? So straight away, you know exactly what the profile of that is going to be, and it will be really amazing if eventually, and I think it's going to happen, if eventually consumers, will have the ability to select their rums based on that rather than just the color.
Yeah.
It's not the same, bro. And it's amazing in rum, right? If the color is white, but it could be like 15 different things depending on where it comes from and how it was made. And we tell people, ask those questions. You gotta always it's not, because sometimes people will take a white rum that maybe comes from Jamaica and then go home. They're like, it's not my traditional understanding of white rum.
So coming back to this bottle, could you pass the bottle, please?
Yep.
So we're currently tasting the plantation
Dark, original dark.
So I want to read the label once. It says double-aged rum. So I'm assuming that means it's been in 2 different barrels.
No, kinda. So when you buy rums from the country, or when you bring a rum from these countries, what he's doing, they are already in barrels, right? So you select a particular flavor profile. Then he brings it back to France, because if you remember, I told you he was a cognac producer.
Yeah.
So then these are re-aged in old cognac barrels or European.
Yeah.
So blended and then aged.
Aged
right?
again.
So they're aged in the islands, because that's where they are.
Yeah.
Okay, takes them to France, blends them,
And puts them back.
and that so that would be his double aging.
Yeah. Yeah, aged for a second time in medium toasted French oak barrels for that impart a pleasant, spicy tannin notes.
Yeah. Which will be any French product that you think of, very similar to that flavor profile, which is very different from American oak.
Cool. When we're tasting a rum like this, what are we looking for? And one word that we've said a lot is funky, which I think for all of us understand that, but let's try and explain what that means.
Oh, that's going to be tricky, because on the palate, you know what it is. So basically, without being something which is too.
I think it starts with the nose. Like the moment you get
Yeah,
your nose.
for me, a lot of the funk is on the nose. Yeah.
So you do get the sugarcane sweetness. The sweetness pulls through. You know that okay, this is probably like a sugarcane product. If you do not know, it's a blind tasting. You pick it up, you would immediately know that it's a sugarcane product, right? The sweetness comes through,
Yeah.
and then there's this oily feeling that comes in, like it's heavy on the nose, and you think of a lot of tropical fruits. But when you think of the tropical fruits, they're not citrus. They're more rotting style, if that makes sense.
I think rotting, because I mean, if you try a white Jamaican, I mean, you would have a lot of passion fruit. You would have pineapples, so not.
But ripe. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right.
I correct. Yeah, not rotten.
Not rotten.
I mean, sorry. I apologize.
I was going to say overripe mangoes and stuff like
There
that.
you go.
Overripe
Exactly. All these
pineapple.
tropical fruits.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Would
100%.
Would you eat an overripe mango?
Depends, I guess, on a lot of factors.
I mean, overripe is just another word for almost rotten.
Almost, but not.
But not quite.
Yeah.
So does that make sense? It is overripe. Like on a serious note, it is overripe fruits, usually stuff that you will not touch, right? But in this, it has an attractive quality.
Yeah.
And once you start drinking this, you can't go. It's addictive.
I think more than rotten, it's fermentation, right? Like if that thing actually it is rotting only then.
Yeah. Can we all agree that I was right?
I think that for a lot of people, the best way to really understand funk is probably to put two glasses together, one next to it, one which is more Jamaican, because that funk will really come to you and it will be apparent. I think that some of the flavors that we go there, are definitely the type of flavors that are really gonna come. Those fresh, ripe, herbaceous fruits, which are going to be there. There's a lot to do, with the fermentation as well. How the fermentation is really able to bring those characteristics forward. Because some of the rums, they're just light, and the body just really kind of falls on your palate, and this is those rums usually, they do have a really interesting mouthfeel. The way that your whole palate is when I say alive, I don't mean that it's strong in spirit, but that you just perceive just a lot of
Yeah, it does
flavors.
not
There's
feel
so much flavor on
Yeah,
this.
it does not feel volatile, but it's tingly.
Yeah.
Like you see the palate go all the way through, right? And it sits on your palate very nice. What you'll also notice is not sugary sweet. So a lot of rums that you get, especially countries that we spoke about now, there are a few Venezuelan rums which are available. They are great for what they are, good to get people into rum, but super sweet.
To like Diplomatico. I love
You're
Diplomatico.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
We
That
were
sweetness.
talking about this the other day.
Yes, exactly.
Like Diplomatico, I think, is a great gateway rum.
Yeah.
100%.
You'll polish off a bottle without knowing it, but it is sweet though.
Yeah.
I used to drink a lot of it before. When I first, I was like, dude, this rum is brilliant.
Yeah.
But then I started learning about all of these other rums and started drinking them. So I like a little bit of a holdback on the sweetness.
Yeah.
Right? You should be able to go back for a second and a third sip.
Yeah.
I mean, for me also, when you do take that sip, it's not clampy.
Yeah.
You have all of those flavors kind of being subtle and thrown in, and all the way to the back palate. It's there. It sits there.
For me, this whiskey. Why am I saying whiskey?
It's that good, huh? Holy shit, the Freudian slip.
But yeah, I think for me, this rum, just a lot of tropical fruits and funk.
100%.
Yeah, but the funk also can be perceived because, they're rum, so they're going to be sweet. Okay, but in the realms of rum, and just going back to what Arijit has said, is that they're drier rums compared to some of the sweetness that you can perceive. And I think that Rum Agricole, you will see that it's rum, it's sweet, but for sweet rum, it's dry.
I also think the mouthfeel is a little different.
Can I just hold on for? Can you train us on how to say Rum Agricole the way you do?
Agricole.
Agricole.
Rum
Agricole.
Agricole.
And there you go. If you have a few of these, then it'll be easier.
Yeah, hopefully. Think
Ice cold.
what we'll do is we'll take a little break. When we come back, we'll taste one more rum, and we'll also come up with a list of suggestions for rums for people to start off with.
Okay.
Sweet.
Hello, hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Drives, Cyrus is joined by Puneet K. Goyal. Puneet is the co-founder of Blue Smart, India's first all-electric ride-hailing service. Driving around the city in the Volvo XC40 Recharge, Cyrus and Puneet talk about how the taxi service sector around the globe is adapting to electric vehicles. Don't forget to check out the video edition of this episode on the Cyrus Says YouTube channel, and there are some really funny bits over here, especially pay attention to what happens when they hit the toll plaza. On Postcard from Nowhere's Ireland Untraveled series, Utsav explores foghorns, their colonial connection, and the X Club, a not-so-secret scientific organization. On Credit Smart with Sybil, Anupam and Sujata decode some of the factors that might hinder a good credit score and help you arrive at solutions. On Storytellers and Story Sellers, Vineet is joined by travel vlogger MSK, and they talk about how his fear of the camera actually helped his vlogging career. And on The Longest Constitution, Priya talks about slum eviction as well how the use of contempt of court has crippled freedom of expression over the years. Once again, I'd like to remind you all, don't forget to visit our merch store. It's on ivmpodcast.com. We have a link to the store. It'll take you to our partner's website, beyondfollow.com, and you can go directly beyondfollow.com/IVM. Also, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please do spread the word about this show or any of the other shows that you are listening to. You can do this by telling a friend, because word of mouth is helpful, or rate or review these shows wherever you're listening to them. That is also really helpful to us. And just a reminder, a number of our shows are available on YouTube as full video podcasts. Do check those out as well. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Bumble, Volvo XC40 Recharge, Heads Up for Tails, HDFC Mutual Fund, and TransUnion Civil. Thank you so much for making this possible.
All right, we're back. We're talking about rums. We're tasting rums. Let's open the second bottle that we have, which is a recent launch. I think Dimi will also be very well equipped to talk about this.
And we will need 41 more minutes.
But what I do want to ask, or rather point out, is that this is the short story White Rum just launched. It says matured and blended. So again, the blend is coming back. It says an Indo-Caribbean blend of pot, still, and cascade rums. Tell me more.
So the idea of this rum, because here, of course, we're in India, and rum is an exciting prospect, as a category. So we really wanted to bring, a good quality Jamaican style rum, that really provides, more options, to consumers out there. There's just not enough. There's all the sugar cane in this country, and there's not enough good quality rums. So the idea was to bring, a true to style Jamaican style rum. So we kind of brushed about this, just earlier, and this is just a great expression of that. So what we have Jamaican rums. We have Dominican and Trinidad rums. Okay. So and we also have Indian rum in here. So the Jamaican, Trinidad, and Dominican, of course, they're not here, so we bring them over here, and that's blended here, with the Indian rum.
So,
okay.
So which country is imparting what sort of a character?
So the Jamaican, good question. So the Jamaican brings that funk that we were kind of just discussing earlier. So when people are able, to get one of those bottles, you will see. And if you compare it, to other white rums that are available over here, straight away you will see the mouthfeel, the character, the body, the flavors that you get out of this rum, is a whole different expression, and that's very Jamaican style. The Trinidad and Dominican rums that we have here, those ones are aged and they just kind of round off the flavors. That's what they hear, and the Indian molasses just really kind of provides that base for all these rums, to express themselves. So this is kind of how we build this rum.
And again, I think the exciting thing here is it's a white rum, but it's got so much flavor.
Exactly.
And again, fruits.
And character.
Yeah.
So when we were discussing earlier about those flavors, you really kind of get them here. On the nose, you get those tropical fruits, which are there, pineapple, passion fruit, definitely there. You may say overripe mangoes.
Rotten.
Not rotten. There's nothing rotten here.
I mean, I look at rotten as a positive word.
Okay.
It's like
No, but what's
we'll
also...
leave it at that.
But what's also incredible about this, because for years rum has been trying to be vodka, and then they go as neutral as possible. with this kind of any drink that you make, or even with soda or Coke, it really pushes through.
Yeah.
Like you do get the funk, you do get the body, you get a little bit of the the richness that comes from the Trinidad that's inside as well, right? Which is brilliant, and it's the right amount. Again, like we spoke about in white rums, this is a great gateway rum to understand what's happening in the actual rum world outside of India. So it's a beautiful rum to, I mean,
I love
go
that
with.
sentence. What's happening in the actual being the operating word, rum world outside India, because it's such a vast world. When we are tasting rums, just for everyone who's listening to understand, we are tasting these rums by themselves without any water, ice, anything. We're just trying it out. And if you get a new rum, definitely try that out before getting into a cocktail.
100%.
I think it's the same with any spirit. I think that the way that you really kind of get accustomed to any spirit, even before you taste it, to spend some time to understand what the nose, tells you, because the nose always have so much to offer. I'm not speaking about these two spirits specifically, but just spirits in general.
Yeah.
Just really take the time to nose them and understand what flavors you're getting there. When you're comfortable with that, then you can go through the process of actually tasting. And yes, neat. Take it slow. Don't shoot them. So that you can really.
Whoa. What did you just say?
Don't shoot them.
I disagree, but we will go on.
No, I think that it's a beautiful experience, to really get to perceive all the flavors that a liquid has to give you. If you want to understand what flavors this one is, if you shoot them, it's going too fast.
Weren't you shooting stuff like 2 days back?
No, I wasn't shooting stuff 2 days back. I was
Time and a place. Time and a
Time
place.
I was sipping fast.
Sipping fast. What about some classic cocktails or easy to do cocktails at home people should do with rum?
I think, for this one here, I think that the first thing that people can do, just get some lime, get one lime, get some sugar syrups, put 10 mils or half a shot. I would suggest for people to put crushed ice on as no, because with this short story, a frappé is fantastic. What is a frappé? A frappé is get one lime, get 10 mils of sugar syrup, put a large measure of rum, get some cracked ice, put it there, and there you go. Simple. You don't have to be complicated, and people will really see that this becomes eventually, a rum that they rely, because even with that, the characteristics of the rum will still shine.
And you can sip it slow. There's no stress. It's how rum is supposed to be: relaxed, easy. Think of the Caribbean. Sit down on a beach chair.
A rum frappe. We had quite a few of these a few days back, so that for sure.
You don't even want to do that much work. Coca-Cola is interesting, but also a lot of us have stopped having cola because of the sugar element of it.
I would suggest the Swami 2 Cal
100%.
Cola works great with rums.
I just learned how to plug.
Yeah.
This is a joke at multiple levels. The 2 point is awesome. Ginger ale, ginger beer. What Swami is doing, but having said that, I know you are accepting this. Like Ginsberg has a nice ginger beer or something, right?
Yeah.
So all of those with rum will go really, really well. A little bit of ice, but make sure you always have ice. Right? We are drinking it this way because
even soda. This is great with soda.
Oh yeah, we were having this with soda.
With soda, simple,
Yeah.
So you have two options. People will drink rum with Coke. If people don't have rum with Coke because it's too sweet, soda is a great substitute.
Yeah. I think rum soda, especially with this short story white rum, really, really tasty.
Yeah. And also like if you're home and if you want to go a little bit fancy, it'll seem like I'm going nerdy, but it's not, right? So one of the best things to make with rum is punches.
Yeah.
Right? You have 7-8 people coming in, don't want to work too hard. There is a calculation. In fact, there's a poem that existed. It was taught to me by a guy called Richard Hunt, which was 1 of sour, 2 of sweet, 3 of strong, 4 of weak.
Yeah.
So that's a small limerick. Can we call it a limerick? I don't know what it is, but it does exist, which kind of gives you a imagination of what the measure is.
So say that again.
1 of sour, 2 of sweet, 3 of strong, 4 of weak. Weak is either water or soda or sparkling wine or tea or whatever's available to you.
Or ice.
Or ice,
yeah.
right? So now you get a little bit of lime juice, right? Whatever amount, right? If you have a glass, like this small glass, get at least double that amount of sugar syrup. right? Or sugar that's available. You don't want to go that sweet, reduce it. You can always balance it later. Dump in a full bottle of rum inside. Don't have to think too hard. There is rum. You can keep it back in the fridge. Then the last part, just put some spices in, which in India is easily available. Get a star anise in, get a cinnamon in. Don't do dagad fool and all of that stuff. I mean, if you want to, feel free, but spices that we understand. And make your own tea. Whatever tea concoction you have, maybe use a Twinings Earl Grey, forest berry teas, whatever's available. Just make like a quick half a liter or whatever amount of rum that you put in. Just put it with ice and let it sit for a bit. Garnish it with slices. Just pour it in a small glass.
Throw in
Great,
some fruits.
easy. Super easy. Punches with rum are just brilliant.
Yeah, and that recipe, it I think because this was a recipe that was done way back in the days, and I think that for people today, who don't particularly have a sweet tooth, and there's a lot of people like that out there, they just have to switch the one of sour to two of sweet to one of sweet, two of sour.
I was thinking of that when he said that. I
Look
would
at
do that.
look at a daiquiri, the cocktail. The daiquiri cocktail is one of sweet, two of sour. Okay, in India it's a bit kind of different because the limes are so sour. But the frappe that I just mentioned, is one of sweet, two of lime. So this is a great signpost, for people to kind of use either one of sweet, two of sour, one of sour, two of sweet, three of strong, is great. But depending on the sugar acceptance of people, just kind of balance it out.
Make it your own. Like whatever works for you. I like sweeter style drinks, right? Because of my kind of training. And this is interesting. I'm just going to drop this out here. One of the things as an Indian bartender that I've learned, and I don't have a particular style that I come from. So I saw both the American style and the English style and the Australian style. Their balance of sugars are completely different. And you can never make them happy. So if I know Dimi is walking in because he's come from a London school, I always make his drinks super sour. And the more lime, better it is. Like that's how I learned my balances.
A daiquiri is what? Want to go over the proportion?
So daiquiri is interesting. There are a lot of stories which have been used for marketing and stuff otherwise. But if you look at it, it is a 3-ingredient cocktail, but follows the same kind of profile without spices, right? So you have lime and sugar.
Yeah.
But in most cases, equal amount. What I have found for India that I like is I use a 2:1 sugar, which basically means if I'm using 1 kg of sugar, I will use 500 ml of water and just dissolve it out, right? That's a 2:1. Our limes are super tart compared to the ones that you get in America or the ones that you get in Thailand. So our 15 ml of lime juice is exactly balanced by 15 ml of a 2:1. That gives me that's the way I have kind of figured it. But again, when you're in your home, figure out how much. 21 bites it does not really matter. So it's basically lime juice, and it has to be fresh lime juice, right? You can think about 4 hours, 6 hours and all that, but fresh lime juice is always better. You can use sugar syrup if you want to make drinks faster, but there was a method that we use which is caster sugar. It's easier to balance. So like 3 spoons of caster sugar that goes in, dissolve that out. See his eyes. He's a
3 spoons of caster sugar.
If it was 3 small spoons, short spoons, and you go in about a 50 to 60 ml of rum, right? And just make sure there's lots of ice, and you shake it like mad. So dilution is very important. The amount of water that goes into the system, and you have to know the only way to make a drink cold, the ice has to melt in. Right, so you get the shake right, double strain into a nice little coupe glass and have it. So that's a basic daiquiri, which we knew was with crushed ice and sugar and all of that. This recipe is more like the Cuban style, old school, delicate cocktail, but super easy to make.
Yeah, I was in Singapore a few months back. Sugar Hall had just reopened, and
you lucky bastard.
Yeah, I was there on day 1 or day 2. I had 3 daiquiris back to back. Stunning.
Yeah.
So well made.
And it's a 3-ingredient drink, so easy.
So
but
easy.
So even when we do cocktails and like when we have something called shadow list, so the daiquiri is a very important part of it. If you cannot make a daiquiri, you can't make a margarita, and you will never be able to balance drinks.
Yeah.
It's the easiest drink to screw up.
Yeah.
And you will never get a job in my bar.
Yeah.
You know, that's the because you always have drinks that you taste bartenders on.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't use the most complex drinks. You know, you just want to see if bartenders have the ability, you know, to make simple drinks really well. So you would get them to make a martini. I would always get them to make a daiquiri. I would always do that.
It's
you
like
know.
asking a chef to make an omelet, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Have you ever had smackeries? Do you know what a smackery is?
No, I don't know what
It's the newest thing. It's in you know how in Bombay Chinese we do 1:2. It's the same thing. So there are people who walk into a bar, especially from our style of craft cocktail bars, and they will say, "Can I have 6 smackeries?" Which is basically 3 daiquiris broken into 6, so that they can just dump it down. And I apologize. So you go to 4-5 bars and you just, because bars are busy, right? So you don't want to stress them out.
Yeah.
So if I'm not having, like, let's say a Boilermaker with a shot and a beer, I will say, can we have like quick smackeries? But the guy's literally going to do 2 shakers, pour it out, small beautiful glass. And I remember we were discussing doing a bar. We wanted to have a whole section on just half drinks.
Half drinks.
Yeah. So you don't have to commit too much to one full drink.
One daiquiri, 1/2.
A short story smackery. Holy shit. I'll send you a bill.
See, an agency would have charged you 20 lakhs for this idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. All I want is a cigar.
Okay, coming to so we've tasted 2 rums. We've spoken about some of the classic drinks you can make at home. What about the mojito? Is that still cool to say?
Of course,
Yeah,
you know, mojito will never go away. You know, and the right environment made well, mojito is a fantastic drink.
And our weather, especially.
Exactly.
Mojito is the
Exactly.
Michael Jordan of cocktails. Hate it, not hate it, like it, love it. It's the Chicago Bulls. It'll always be there. You gotta. But you know what makes a mojito? That crushed ice has to be proper.
Yeah.
Yes.
You mess with the crushed ice, everything goes downhill. The mint fucking floats up, and most of the Bombay mint, you know where it's grown.
Yeah.
By the railway tracks?
by the railway tracks.
You know,
So every day.
I don't put water in my mojito. I don't, because a lot of the times you go to bars, you know, and they make it and then just literally just top it up with
I'm
a
just going to ask you,
with water.
who's adding water to the mojito?
Everybody has put water in mojito.
Soda water.
Soda water,
Like
yeah,
soda
soda,
water.
yeah, simply soda water.
Soda water.
Everybody does that, you know, which is the correct way of making it.
In France-
but in mine, I don't, because the crushed ice eventually will melt.
Yeah.
So you just turn my mojito into a mint flavored water.
In France, Perrier is called water.
He's French. Yeah, I get it.
So there are stories of how it came from a drink called the El Drake or the Drac or the Dracecito, etc., 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 which was basically mint leaves, lime, and aguardiente, which was mixed in, right? Which later got developed. There are interesting stories about how before pre-industrial revolution, ice blocks used to come in and bartenders would crack that ice and put it in and became a style. But then you look at the Havana videos, right? Or Cuban videos, how their version of mojito is completely different from the mojitos that we were taught, because we were taught the American style of making the mojito, which was the muddler, lime and skin. You realize after years of being in the industry that they were all marketing plans which kind of over years became the norm, right? And then there's a version of mojito which comes with Angostura bitter, right? But which came from a drink called the Trinidad Swizzle. Right, Trinidad rum is something that we are talking about, which is a brilliant drink, right? It has demerara sugar, a little bit of lime, and you take a swizzle stick and you do the whole dancing with it, and then you have 3 clear layers. So that's how the American mojito became the one with the Angostura bitters. But so there are multiple methods, but the base method and how we were taught and how we learned, a mojito is just mint leaves. You get lime chunks from 1 lime in India. You get about 8 chunks. Use about 4. Quickly muddle it in with some caster sugar. This time I'm going to say 2 spoons of caster sugar so that everyone does not go off their tits about it. You put the rum in. With the crushed ice, mix it up, right? Just give it a little bit of a stir in so that the whole thing mixes. Some of the ice melts down. Makes a nice mix, right? Top it up with a little bit of a splash of soda. You don't need 30 ml, 60 ml, half a bottle. Just a little bit, just to, bring down the strength of the rum, so that it's easier kind of to drink. Top it up with a little bit more crushed ice, mint leaves, 1 lime to garnish, straw, easy.
Since we've spoken so much about crushed ice, how to do crushed ice at home? Put in a cloth bag and beat it?
Get a towel that you've never used. Put some ice in and just get your frustration away.
Yeah.
That's it. The
Simple.
best way.
Yeah.
And also, I think crush ties is kind of a misnomer. I would say go crack ties. Just you don't need it completely like snow.
Yeah,
Just
because a lot of our freezers have that crushed ice option, which is shit. Like that doesn't work.
oh, you have a fancy fridge then. How did you fit it into a Bombay flat?
Uh, it's me and my fridge. That's it.
Now you gotta just crack ties. Crack ties is kind of good. I have made mojitos with cube ice as well. I mean, at the end of the day, what you need to get perfect
That wasn't your proudest moment, I assume.
I mean, at that time I needed a drink, so did not care if I have that. Just stir it. But the important part is the dilution.
Yeah.
You got to get the dilution right. If you get that perfect, I mean, for me, a drink is not about taking a picture. I just want to have a nice drink, and sometimes you just feel like having a good mojito. So if a cube ice is there,
Yeah.
I will use it. Cracked ice, just go pop, and you're done.
Okay, so dilution is important, So in your cocktail, in your mojito, it's important that you charge it with a lot of ice, because if you don't do that, then what happens is your drinks actually dilute faster. And if on top of that you've added water, then what should in a sense be a great mojito turns out to be a really bad wannabe of a potentially great mojito.
Yeah.
Okay, and people don't understand that, So that's why when I go to bars, I just send them all back, because they're just not right, and people tend to forget that dilution and the amount of ice here is kind of important.
And then look, you can just put a little bit of ice. The mint starts flow. It does not look good. You got to make it appealing visually.
Yeah.
Visually, it's a well composed drink, right? There's a lot more to a mojito than just the sum of its parts. It needs to be presented well, and you have to do it. If I can't make it, I will not serve it, right? You don't, and I'll try to give them something else.
Yeah.
But mojito is a great drink, and we have not even discussed the tiki and tropical drinks.
Yeah. I
The
think
kind of stuff that you can do with rum.
That's another episode.
Yeah, that's a full. But I will say, for people who like movies, and I know you do, and people around, if you've watched Django Unchained, and we were talking about it yesterday, it is a rum drink that Leonardo DiCaprio orders there called the Polynesian Pearl Diver. There are not a lot of Indian bars who make it, but if you're ever traveling and you go to a tiki bar, that's the drink that you order. It's one of the most phenomenal things you'll ever have.
I'm going to look up the recipe and try that.
Yeah.
Before we end the episode, give me some rum suggestions. And I think from two angles here, because I think some of our listeners could also be bartenders.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from both aspects of consumers and trade, perhaps, give me like 4 or 5 suggestions. And stuff that's either here or if you're traveling.
From an India context?
I think from an India context, but also what you said, if you're traveling somewhere.
Of rum brands, you mean, or cocktails?
Yeah, rum brands.
Rum brands.
Like stuff that you might go to a shop
Mm-hmm.
in Singapore or London or something to pick up.
Nice.
I mean, I would again, because saying rum brands, I think a plantation, is a great gateway into a rum, because into the rum world, because they do have rums from so many different places, and I think that this is good. If anyone out there is going to a shop there, I would encourage them to bring an Agricole, because I don't know, because I don't want anyone here to go to 15 shops to find a specific brand that I said. Okay, so go to one of the shops, and say, I need to bring back one Agricole, because there's a Spanish style over here. So one Agricole, one Jamaican, and again, maybe just another Spanish style rum, all on the same price point, white or dark, just get them the same, so you can come home and really have the opportunity to understand each of them for what each of them is trying to communicate. Okay, and this is how you will start, because next time you will travel, you will do the same thing, but you will get maybe gold rums.
Yeah.
And this is kind of how you start building your universe of that. Because if I say to you, go and get this white rum, go and get this dark rum, go and get this aged rum here, for a lot of consumers out there, they don't have a point of reference to that. So it'd be very difficult to really assess it.
Yeah.
Because, you're there at home with friends, okay, what is it about this rum that I should really be picking up on? And people go, I don't know. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Right? So it's not that easy. So go out there to shops, and bring 3 of the same category, white or age or whatever, but from different styles.
Yeah. Fair.
I kind of look at it different. It's a little bit more, it's not complicated, but I buy rum at two levels. One which I can have with drinks whenever I want to, and one which I want to collect, right? So there is a whole segment of the rum industry that exists, right? These are like $100 rums and above. In fact, a funny story, right? I was talking to the gentleman who handles accounts for the company that we work with. He does not look like a rum drinker, right? It was incredible. We are sitting with him. He is particular about the brand, where it comes from, and what country. And he was like, I want this rum when you come back, right? So he wanted a Hamden Jamaican. That's a $170 rum. It's a collector's. You will sip it once in a while. So you have this whole industry that exists, which is about this aged rums. So every year, for every 4 bottles that I buy that I can use and drink on a regular basis, I buy one collector's and I keep that. So the Hamdens are very good. If you are a collector, if you see the word Caroni on it, get that bottle.
What does Caroni mean?
It was a bottling family, right? They would get with the Samaroli is another one. They had a few variants as well. Definitely get those bottles and keep it. Then you have the Four Square distilleries. Keep it. There is a rum that and then there are other rum. So which is one side. You can also look at books which are available. Like pick up a book called The Smuggler's Cove. Beautiful book about tiki style cocktails. When you look at recipes, see what rum they have mentioned. If you see the name and anywhere you find that rum, keep it on your list. Pick it up, because you never know you will get it or not.
Yeah.
Definitely get a Jamaican rum, the Ray and Nephew or anything that is. It's just a rum that you want to show off to people that I have it. Right? It's on your.
Yeah,
it's
but
not drinkable, but
No, it's greatly drinkable. But I think for someone to be able to appreciate Renefew, I would argue that you have to graduate, because it's a phenomenal rum. And for anyone out there, who doesn't really understand rum, Rare Nephew is not something for everybody. It definitely is one of my favorite rums ever. I love
and the
that rum.
daiquiri they make with it is called a nuclear daiquiri. So you understand what that is, right?
Yeah. It's phenomenal, but not if for the connoisseurs out there, 100%, you need to have this in your bar at home. If you're not, I think that you need to go into different steps before you can appreciate, Rare Nephew.
And then for the last part, I look at countries a lot, right? So if it's Panama, I would pick up a Abuelo, right? If it's Jamaican, Appleton. Like all of these rums that exist, and you try to get them.
And Appleton's very easily available at duty free.
It is getting, and I
definitely.
think slowly they will put it in the India market.
The VX is great.
One of the most interesting rums, and whenever I do rum chats, I kind of tip a hat to him. There's a gentleman I like called Richard Seal, right? In fact, he's brought back a lot of the Barbadian rum culture, and he's the Velvet Falernum. So his company is the one who makes and runs it. There is a beautiful story about a rum called the Real McCoy. If you ever see that bottle, it's available in Gurgaon for like 3,000 and 5,000 rupees.
You made me try this at Tesouro.
Yeah. It's friggin' brilliant, and the story is so good. So there's a movie producer called Bailey Riley or something, who was making a movie about a guy in the 1920s during Prohibition who would sail his ship and go to the Caribbean, pick up rum, and park his boat 2 miles off the shore, and people would buy rum from him. And what was interesting was this rum was not cut with turpentine and other stuff. This was like proper rum. That's why it's called Real McCoy. So when they made the documentary, the guy went into Barbados and met Richard Seal, who's, I mean, like Gabriel, Richard Seal, and sometimes they come to loggerhead, right? It's documented stories, but a great guy to follow. And they found the history of Barbadian rum and who this guy was, and build up the whole story, and ended up making 2-3 variants of that rum. It's now easily available if you can get it. Good proper aged rum. Keep it in your bar. Buy Plantations if you can find Plantation 5 from Barbados.
Yeah.
Or they have it's called Jamaica, which is Jamaica, which is the old pronunciation of Jamaica.
Yep.
So they have that just beautiful expressions. Fiji, I never had tasted Fiji rums. Get one of those in your hand.
Mauritius has some good rums.
I was just gonna come to that. What about Mauritius?
Mauritius has some really good rums, and what's interesting with Mauritius is that they have a combination of Rhum Industriel, so which is your molasses type rums, and they also have Rhum Agricole, so you don't have to go all the way to Martinique and Guadeloupe and this function, because they have a few there.
Yeah, and half of South Bombay anyways goes there regularly. So
there you go. And the distilleries, you can visit them, and they're really nice, they're really decent, and they definitely have some really good rums out there. And they also have flavored rums, so Yeah, so Mauritius is definitely a good stopover for the ones who don't want to go all the way to the West Indies.
Yeah.
I found another bottling company called Jung and Wolf. Very nice. They have a Barbados rum with like cricket label and stuff. These are I mean, we are part of these rum groups and stuff, and there's so many labels that keep coming up. They're brilliant.
Are there any Instagram people accounts or Facebook groups like?
Oh, for me, Ian Brunel. You definitely follow Ian Brunel, who's like the rum ambassador, and he made a whole industry himself. He does the rum festival. I remember in Cotton, there was a place called Cotton's in Camden Street that he used to run, which had
He used
like
to own it.
300 rums,
Yeah.
and this is like 2010, right? Way ahead, and he's a rum ambassador, so definitely follow him. Then the Manchester Rum Festival. So those guys, the Manchester Rum something, they are really, really good. They talk a lot about what are new things that are coming in. Follow Richard Seal on Facebook. They have a fair amount of chat on what's happening. If you really, really like rums and the context. Like I keep saying, the India context and Asia context and very, very different on how they look at rums. Japan is doing some really, really cool stuff.
Oh, really?
But,
Rums?
yeah, they used to have a rum called Ryoma or something. And they're bringing more in. Like they have realized what's happening with rum. So should be interesting.
There's a few good books, a really good book that talks well about rum is And a Bottle of Rum. So it's basically the story of rum in 10 cocktails, and they go all the way from the beginning, and they communicate about the social impact, the economy, of course rum, how it came out, and the drinks that kind of went along to that, and it's a very enjoyable read. For the ones who are a little bit more curious about going to a deeper level, there's a website called Got Rum. By an historian called Marco Pierini, and his website, has a lot of very interesting information on rum, and anyone who goes down there, will really be able to understand what rum really is. It's really, because rum is started, at the time of slavery with lots of pirates, so keeping tabs of these histories, and has been kind of complicated, but now rum, from it's all kind of tagged them as kill devil to what it's become. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Also, if you like controversy, see the Rum Diary. Great movie that played out really well across 10 years.
Anyways, thank you both for coming on to the show.
Cheers.
Give me your Instagram handles, social media handles, both of you.
Sure.
Say it.
Oh, Dimi and Arijit.
Mine's more fun. Drinks with the Bose.
BOS.
But because I'm cool, it's DA, not THE.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.